I want to be a YouTuber. And I was like, oh.
Welcome to Hot Girl Stomps. Hello, Gemma.
Hello, Cheri. I very nearly said Hump Stomps World.
Hump Stomps World. Oh my God. Producer Lewis, cut here. Please insert Hump Stomps World. Thank you. Gemma's son, I got a voice note and it was the cutest thing ever. And he keeps doing it now, doesn't he? He walked in earlier. He just opened, he literally flung the door open. He went, "Welcome to Hump Stomps World," as he like rolled in the door. I was like, you're so cute, it's unreal.
When he sneaks in here when Lewis is working, because this is podcast room /
Lewis's office.
Producer Lewis's actual office from home. If Rupert sneaks in here whilst Lou's working, he will just bundle down in front of it. "Welcome to Hump Stomps World. My name is Rupert."
Can we just like leave it recording and then just like let him just do something?
I don't know how I feel about putting my son on social media. I'll blur out his face.
Not video, but like recording.
The audio is
but your
very
daughter
cute.
is obsessed. She's desperate to get on this podcast.
She is I'm ashamed to say it. She's a kid of a product of her time.
Yeah.
My heart fell through, because like when she was 2, 3, she wanted to be a police lady for a long time. And my girl is bossy. So I was like, yeah, that tracks. You'll be great. Well done for finding your calling at 2. And she's gone through a few different things and they were all very wholesome to start. Policewoman, teacher. She's been on a fairly consistent level of fashion designer for a good few years.
Fair enough.
She's quite a creative little soul. She likes all that kind of stuff. And she's so the opposite of me. Like, she loves to put a fit together and like she wants to wear dresses all the time and glitter. And I'm just like, whatever. Unicorns
and butterflies.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't really do that. But yeah, and then one time you ask her and she's like, "I want to be a YouTuber," and I was like, "Oh,
every kid wants to be a YouTuber at the minute, though, don't they?"
They do.
Yeah.
They do. It's just
she'll grow out of that, but she does. She's always like, "Are we podcasting?" Like she'll like weasel away in here.
Mummy,
like,
can I do one on the podcast?
Yeah. I want to tell my ghost story on the podcast.
A ghost story.
Have you got any ghost stories?
The ghost story she's going to make up completely off the top of her head.
Yeah. Well, she said to me, she's like, "Auntie Cheri, I want to tell a ghost story from school." And I'm like, did something really happen at school? No. You actually got a ghost story from school, or are we just wanting an
She
excuse?
doesn't remember talking about the little boy downstairs in the old house. No. So
that's good though, because
that probably is good.
The story that I told about the lady that my dad was convinced was my grandma walking across the hallway, I think if I actually remembered that in my actual
it probably
brain,
weird you out a bit.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to remember anything like that. Not at all.
No, thank you.
No, thanks. But yeah, so I'm just going to roll straight into this topic. I don't know if you know what topic I'm covering today. For once,
I completely remember exactly what we discussed.
For once, I'm actually doing some work because the last few episodes, it's been quite a few episodes. I have had a lot on.
You have. In
my defense,
there's no hate or judgment from this corner of the room.
Thank you, darling. So I've chosen a topic. There's some stuff going on with it at the minute, which is why I wanted to talk about it. And the stuff that's going on with it isn't really the paranormal. It's more the drama and the like logistics around this particular location. And it's the Conjuring House. So the original Conjuring House from the very first Conjuring movie.
Best one.
I think it was. Well, I've only seen the first 2 or 3, I think.
I think I've only seen 3, to be fair.
I got a bit about them. I think after the second one, because I really like the Enfield haunting. Like, I don't believe that story. That's another story for another time. But I don't really believe in most of that story. But I just didn't really feel the big vibe with how they told that, so I think I kind of got a little bit like, ugh. And then I know they've done like the Devil Made Me Do It, which is another really big case, like that's quite a famous paranormal case and stuff like that. And I'm a bit like anxious to go in and watch it to see what they've done with that, because The Conjuring, and I'll come on to this as we go through this particular story about this house now. Obviously, movies don't really portray how it really is, how it really happens.
Oh, it's got to captivate an audience, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
and obviously
2.5, 3 hours.
the whole point of the Conjuring movies is it's focusing on Ed and Lorraine Warren and the cases that they took on. So obviously it's going to be heavily Ed and Lorraine based, whereas a lot of the Conjuring story didn't have anything to do with them. They came into it after, and they're like a smaller part of it. It's like the Amityville Horror. I'm surprised they didn't make an Amityville Conjuring movie, because the Ed and Lorraine Warren did go and investigate the Amityville house, but right towards the end.
I'm trying to think if they have. If that's a recent
I don't
one.
think it is. I don't think Amityville is one of their stories, because Amityville Horror's had its own horror movies and stuff that are based
maybe it's
more
been done
around
too many
the family.
times.
Yeah, it's based more around what they experience. Ed and Lorraine, I think maybe feature in one, but not as part of the Conjuring, like the Vera Farmiga and whatever the guy's name is, Patrick Thingamabob. Not them playing them, obviously. But yeah, I think obviously you've got to sell a horror film. You've got to make it probably more than what actually happens. But I've only watched the first two. But I have watched The Conjuring. I did enjoy it as a film on its own. So yeah. It's me having my cup of tea. Oops, sorry, it's producer Lewis. I've dinged it.
He's going to be fuming.
He's going to be fuming. Okay, so what I'm going to do, this took me forever to put this in order of everything that happened. So I'll give you a bit of a rundown. So the history of the property. So it was built in 1736 on Round Top Road in, I think, what was then called Harrisville, which is like a suburb of this particular town, which is called Burrillville in Rhode Island. So Rhode Island, if you don't know, it's on the east coast of the US. So you've got, I think, New York down here, and then like Connecticut. Rhode Island's like tiny, like a really tiny, it's like the size of like Birmingham in the UK. Like it's a really, really tiny county or state. And then you've got like Massachusetts above. So it's in New England. It's in that whole like where all of the settlers, the first settlers of the US kind of settled in. So it is actually near the border of Massachusetts. So Rhode Island, just for a little bit of an example really, Rhode Island was actually only established in, and I can't see it on here because it's deleted it, 1636. So this house was built 1736. So Rhode Island as a state had only existed for 100 years at this point. The United States wasn't even founded until 1776. So this property was built before the founding of the United States in its current fashion. So it's a very, very old property. So it's 40 years before the birth of the USA. At the time, this land that it was built on was actually owned more by like private owners. So they kind of like sectioned up the areas of Rhode Island. Like America was sectioned up. They bought, and I use the term bought very, very loosely, land from Native Americans and like established their own kind of like towns, which is why a lot of towns out there are like Harrisville, for example. Probably the guy was called Harris and he named this place after himself. Eventually, obviously, as with the formation of the US, it kind of became this big structure where it was owned by a government. So this is how old it is. Obviously, Americans, I think a lot of Americans get really jealous of us in the UK because like we've got buildings built in like 110 or like
old.
The White Tower, for example, like in the Tower of London was built like 1070 and their oldest buildings are like 1736. For the US, this is a bloody old building. So throughout the 1800s, the early 1800s, this land was owned by the Arnold Sherman families. These families actually ended up owning this property for about 8 generations. So it went by a number of names: the Old Arnold Estate, the Richardson Arnold House, the Dexter Richardson House. So there was some obviously arguments between names there. And at one point, the farm on Round Top Road. I think now it's just known by its house number. It's not got really anything around it, and it was basically an estate, so it had 8.5 acres. To put that into terms, so a football pitch is like 1.6 acres. Chatsworth House sits on 35,000 acres, and this is 8.5. So yes, it's an estate, and this is going to be important for later on in the story how big this estate is, because there would have been properties on this estate around this house. Right. It did change hands. It was a farmhouse. It was a normal property. it kind of went back and forth between what its use was as an estate over time. And like I say, that is going to be important in a little bit. So one really, really important person to this story as we go through it is somebody who lived on the estate, not in the property, although stories will have you believe she did. She didn't live in the property, she lived in a farmhouse on the property. That idea of how big the estate is, I think, is really important, because this is not actually that big. So if she lived on a farmhouse, it really wouldn't have been far away. It would have been like 3 doors down from you, potentially, how far away this farmhouse could have been.
Yeah.
Her name was Bathsheba Sherman, nee Thayer. She was married to Judson Sherman, who is obviously one of the families that owned this house for 8 generations. She was born in 1812. She died in 1885, and she's still buried in Harrisville to this day. You can still visit her grave. She had one son, Herbert Leander Sherman, who was born 1851, died in 1903, and supposedly she had 3 more children who died. Now, this is a really important part to this story, because she's supposedly the person who haunts this property. As we go through the story, this will become clear. Those 3 children, ghost hunters will have you believe that she was a witch and that she sacrificed those other 3 children, and that Herbert is the only one who made it to adulthood. One of those children died in her care and was examined by a medical examiner and found to have a long needle-like wound in the back of its skull. She was arrested. She was never tried for anything because there was no evidence that it was her that inflicted this wound, so she walked free, although the townsfolk always believed that it was her that killed this child. She didn't die on the property. Like I say, she lived in the farmhouse on the estate, and again, reports will have you believe that she took her own life. Historians believe she most likely just died of natural causes. Back in that time,
40 was old.
That was quite an old-ish age. Her son was like in his 50s when he died, and he died of natural causes as well. Doesn't say what happened to her husband. So just think about Bathsheba as we go through this story, because she is, like I say, the one who... I think it was the Warrens really that kind of were like, this is who it is that's haunting your property. But we'll go through this. So from the 1800s to the 1960s, like I say, 8 generations of the Arnold Shermans lived on the property. No real records of any paranormal going on, but up until the 1960s, really, would records really have lasted? You know, diaries and stuff, maybe you might have written something in your diary throughout the 1800s if you were having paranormal experiences, but in reality, there's no big tabloids and stuff that are going to pick up a paranormal story from you. We know a lot of that started, that big paranormal satanic panic kind of stuff started from like the 60s, 70s onwards, and that's when we really started to get reports. So it's interesting the timings of this. So in 1971, this property was bought by the Perron family. They are the family that feature in the Conjuring movie. This is whose life that film goes over, but it is quite different to what is portrayed in the film. So they're Roger and Caroline. They bought the property with their 5 daughters, Andrea the oldest, and then Nancy, Christine, Cindy and April. When they bought the property, they thought, this is going to be our dream home. It's got land, you know, it's quite a nice area, it's quite a safe area, although there was a little bit of worry at this time around serial killers in the US. The previous owner did say to them, and I need to find the exact quote because I did write it down, but he basically pre-warned them not to leave their lights off at night. And they kind of thought, are we a bit worried about this statement? Is it just because, you know, at this time, this whole serial killer thing seems to be like a really big thing in the US? Is he just pre-warning us just to keep the lights on? They thought it was a bit strange, but like I say, they were excited to move into this property. It was like a 14-room house. It's quite a large house.
Probably
so
the kind
really
of house
excited.
you wouldn't ever dream that you'd actually end up owning, sort of thing, isn't it?
Exactly. And they did put, and it's really important to note, they did put all of their life savings into this property. Like financially, this was their big investment. So they bought it. There was no moving back out of this property. So, they moved in. So the family almost immediately felt that it was odd. and that's the word that they use. So their daughter actually, in 2011, ended up releasing a book. Andrea, the oldest daughter, ended up releasing a book. So there's a lot of evidence and a lot of like her retellings about things that happened throughout this time period that come directly from her. And she said almost immediately the house had like an odd feeling, but it wasn't anything kind of particularly worrisome at the beginning. So what they started to experience, so for the first 6 months until the summer, activity was really subtle. So it was things like clocks stopping at night. They heard scurrying in the walls, but when they moved in, it was winter.
Yeah.
Mice and rats and stuff tend to come inside. This is my thought on this. Mice and rats tend to come inside during that time.
Yeah.
It's a wooden house. American houses, a lot of the times, they're not built like ours are with, bricks and stuff. So I think it's a wooden house. Could that just
on a bit
be
of farmland?
Birds nesting in the walls? I don't know. Doors opening after they've been closed. So not that they were watching doors open, but they would close a door to the living room, for example, and then go back and it'd be open. And then feelings of being watched. So just sort of that first little sort of 6 months leading up until the summer, it was very mild, almost stuff like in a previous episode we've discussed around, you tend to just logically explain things away.
Yeah.
You almost don't want to believe that there's anything going on, and you'll find explanations.
Especially not in the house that you live in.
Exactly, especially. And when you've got 5 young children as
Yeah.
well, 5 young daughters as well, you're going to make up excuses. So then the summer comes around, so summer 1971, things start to get more physical. So the kids' beds started to be shaked. So the kids, Andrea had her own bedroom. The 4 younger kids, it was the 2 next oldest that shared, and then the other 2 shared a room. And the kids were really excited when they first moved in. They were going to get their own bedrooms, or like I think previously they've all been sharing like one room. So they've all of a sudden got all of this room, this space. So for the first 6 months, great. Then the bed started to shake, and Andrea did say during her book that as the oldest daughter, she would often then start to get her younger siblings coming into the bedroom at night to come and get into her bed with her because of these things that were sort of like going on in the bedrooms. They started to hear footsteps that weren't attributed to anything. Started to kind of maybe see shadows, or like they were almost like seeing figures down hall. I think it was one particular hallway that they felt that they started to see maybe shadows. They were getting cold drafts despite it being summer, and I actually went online and I found out what the summer temperatures were in 1971 in Rhode Island. So I needed to know
the level of specificity.
I needed to know.
Yeah.
So it was unusual actually. So the highs were 27 degrees Celsius, like 80 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
It only really dropped to like a low of 15 Celsius, 60 Fahrenheit, which isn't really that cold.
That is a blistering summer's day here.
I mean, here we would be all like sweating and like crying. But to have, feel specifically cold drafts during a summer where it was, 27 degrees out, quite unusual. Again, they weren't massively worried about it at that point. Again, I think they could kind of explain away some of this. At this point, they all still felt fine. Andrea, in her books, was very much like, about it, didn't really care. So late 1971 comes around. The kitchen kind of starts to become the main place for this. So they start smelling strong odours of like rotting meat. For me, I'm like, it's a kitchen. Is your sink backed up? Because Americans have
garbage disposal.
Garbage disposal. I don't know in the 70s whether they did, but obviously they just scrape all their food down there and it chunks it all up, doesn't it? Did they have something? Did they have like a rat that had rotted under a floorboard somewhere? I don't know, but I think these smells seem to just come and go like that, like in an instant. From what I can gather. The main stairwell as well, they were getting rotting meat in the main stairwell. The mother also, and this one I'm a bit about, her testimony to the Warrens at one point when the Warrens got involved was she'd come into the kitchen that she'd cleaned and there'd be like piles of mud in the kitchen.
You've got 5 kids, ma'am.
That's exactly what my thought was. My thought immediately was, you've got 5 daughters and you live on what is essentially like a farm estate.
Yeah.
Come on. So maybe muddy footprints, but I think from what I can gather, they were literal piles of dirt. You have to rely on your children telling you the truth.
Yeah.
The daughters would also complain that things were being like moved, toys were being hidden and stuff like that. And again, Andrea in her book was very specific. Like, we would ask our sisters, did you move my stuff? Why would I move your stuff? I still don't believe, really. I think siblings mess with each other.
Yeah.
That side of it, I'm still a little bit dubious about. I think maybe there was some sisterly pranks going on there, but they are adamant that, you know, stuff was disappearing and that the mud wasn't being brought in by them at this stage. But again, they're not horribly worried. I mean, obviously, rotting meat is not great, but from what I can gather, it would disappear as soon as it appeared. So it wasn't like a lingering, they were having to live with this. So again, not massively bothered. Things started to turn a little bit then in 1972. So early 1972, like the January, February time, before spring hits, the daughters all started to report, and they all had separate reports of seeing an old lady. So it's gone from doors kind of closing but no one really witnessing them and things that you could explain away, to suddenly the girls are seeing a full-bodied apparition of a woman. Okay. So they explained her with grey hair and wearing dresses that were out of date, like far out of date, like 1800s clothing. This lady was silent, didn't communicate with them in any way, and would literally just disappear in thin air.
Okay.
They also started seeing a young boy, but not all of the daughters would see him. It would be like one or two of them would maybe see all of these things. So one of them would see a young boy. One of the daughters saw a figure that was hanging. One of them at one point reported this old lady to, and my first thought was bent neck lady, where her neck was to the side. So I'm like, oh my God, it's the bent neck lady.
Oh my gosh.
So they're starting to see different things to each other, but all of them are seeing this old lady. And this is where this Bathsheba thing starts to come in potentially. Again, they don't feel threatened. They don't feel that these spirits are currently a threat to them at this stage. They've all been very clear about this.
I was going to say it almost seems more like residual.
They're just
or
happening. They're
time-slippy.
just there. Yeah.
Like you say, if they're not communicating with them, it's just more like you're observing.
Exactly. And they've all said at this stage that they feel they're aware of them, that like the spirits are aware of them, but they're just not doing anything.
Okay.
Obviously, with any good ghost story, this escalates at a later time. But right now, 1972, January-ish, they're all happy.
They're all chilling.
Whatever.
They're all cohabiting.
Yeah. Until mid-1972, it shifts towards the mother now. So a lot of this has been around the kids. Obviously, the mother's been experiencing a lot of the stuff in the kitchen and all of this. The dad's kind of just chilling there. Although he still is in the vibe, not a lot really is going on for him at the minute.
Classic.
Yeah. Classic. They always gravitate towards the women. So mid 1972, Caroline then starts to have experiences, and they're quite extreme. So she starts having dizzy spells. She starts blacking out. She starts feeling that she's being touched and pushed. Her family start reporting that her voice is changing and that she's becoming irrationally angry. Like, literally will be just sat there and suddenly has like a violent, like, angry outburst that nothing has triggered at all.
Was the woman just going through the menopause?
I don't know. I don't know how old she was at this point, to be fair. I probably should have looked that up. But to be fair, like, their youngest daughter was only like 6 or 7 at the time. So is she menopause stage yet? I don't know.
To have had 5.
Yeah, but they usually started a bit earlier back in the day, didn't they? So like 18, 19. True. I don't know. Maybe if anyone knows, please
I'm just
let us
throwing
know.
it out there.
It could be early menopause. It could be anything. But that kind of just started at that time, and these are all only happening in like at certain times. Like, it didn't carry on being the case. It was just at this time. This is how this particular phenomenon is manifesting. She started to report scratches and cuts, and one of the times when she was asked to actually describe this, because she felt that she had blood trickling down her leg, and when she looked, it was like she'd been cut with a needle. This comes back to Bathsheba again. So this needle thing seems to sort of start becoming in, and she was being cut quite regularly, and she'd be just minding her business and she'd been cut.
Oh God.
I know. Weirdly, that's something that I've experienced with somebody, not me myself, but it's 2 times where I've actually experienced like cuts that have just happened out of nowhere. Once was at Dudley Castle. I think you know about this one, and we've got the camera footage of it as well, where the guy has scratches down his face. Second one was actually at the My Haunted Project at the Ye Old King's Head. Last time I went and stayed overnight, there was only me and my friend and another couple that stayed the whole night, and one investigator, and we were all just sat on the bed minding our own business, and then this guy's like, I'm bleeding on my leg. And he's literally got these cuts on his leg, and we even watched the footage back, and at no point does he touch anything. He walks into the room and he's fine, and this cut appears out of nowhere. So, weird that I've experienced this. I can relate, Caroline.
Yeah.
Not me myself, but I can relate, Caroline. So, obviously it's now kind of latched itself, or it's got something about Caroline now. So fast forward to late that year then, late 1972. Now objects are starting to be thrown around the room. Caroline starts to claim that she is waking up in the middle of the night and she's levitating off the bed, like she's waking up and she's in the air.
Yeah.
One of her daughters witnessed her mother being dragged across the floor by an unseen force. I don't know which daughter it is. It just says one of the daughters. Doors are now slamming. So previously, where they were closing quietly, where they'd opened them, now they are literally being slammed. Mirrors are shaking on walls at this point.
What happened?
I don't know.
Wrong?
I know. And now this is where that has switched with the family. They are now afraid. So it's gone from that we don't feel threatened, we don't feel that these spirits have anything against us, to within the course of a few months, suddenly everything has just escalated for them. And they are now living in, and Andrea's words were, constant fear.
I'd be interested to know if in the book she has a theory as to...
Yeah, maybe we need to get
why.
the book. We probably could do with reading that. I mean, I'm trying to find what the name of the book is, because I did write it down. My note taking is not the best. I apologise. I'll find the name of the book further down as we go. It's called The House of Darkness, House of Light. It came out in 2011.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe we need to read into that. I just kind of got some snippets.
I'll download it on my Kindle later.
There you go.
I don't know why I said that like that.
I love going into a northern accent. It's the best accent in the world, like Yorkshire accent. So early 1973 rolls around. So the family, obviously at this point, they're like, what the hell is going on in our house? So they've gone down to like the local bookkeeping like records hall, and they've started looking into the history of the property. So they've obviously now found out about Bathsheba and all of this stuff that's going on. So I think they don't necessarily attribute it to her, but they understand that there's a lot of history in this property. A lot of people have died here. There's been a murder. Unfortunately, there was a sexual assault and a murder of a child on this property. And multiple suicides by poisoning, suicides by hanging, suicides by gunshot, like loads and loads of really traumatic things have happened.
Okay.
So the family have now realised there's something major going on in this property. Through having researched it through their fear. So they believe there are multiple spirits. They believe that one of them is a dominant spirit, like a territorial spirit, and does not want them there. Caroline has now started to express that she feels that this spirit either wants her to leave or wants her dead. She genuinely feels this strongly about it now, that this spirit is out for her and out to get her, essentially. So imagine living, like, you're trying to live with your husband and your kids, and they've got no money, they can't move out. They are like locked into this property. They've tried and they just can't get away. And the 70s probably isn't the time when really like loans and stuff were and mortgages were probably less accessible. I don't think women were allowed to have mortgages back then, so she couldn't get a mortgage to get out or anything like that. So like I say, that was early 1973. So come spring, as the light starts to come in, a family member was like, this is getting ridiculous. So they reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren. Okay. So in the film, the family reaches out to the Warrens. It was actually a family member completely behind their back who had heard that the Warrens were investigating a case nearby in Connecticut, and these are on the border of like Massachusetts and Connecticut, so very close. So she actually went and saw them where they were staying and told them the story about this family and said, they need you, they need your help, something's got to give. So they attended the property multiple times then over the course of about 2 or 3 years. They are the ones who attributed all of this to Bathsheba. No proof of this, and it is disputed that Bathsheba was even a witch or that she was even a negative person. Like I say, a lot of people say she killed all 3 of her kids in some satanic ritual. There's no proof of this. Child mortality rates back then were very high. She probably just lost her kids and just one of them survived. But you know what they're like. They loved calling a woman back in the day a witch for absolutely any reason whatsoever. But Ed and Lorraine were convinced that Bathsheba was behind all of this. So they end up doing a seance. And the seance, again, this is in the film, doesn't quite go the same way as the film shows. I think at the end of the seance in the film, they exorcise Bathsheba and the family's saved and everyone's happy ever after. That's not what happens. It makes it worse, if anything. So they get a priest and a medium involved. The children are not allowed to be involved in the seance. In the film, the kids are heavily involved. The kids are not allowed to be involved. Could you imagine telling a kid, sorry, we're going to do some stuff down in the basement now, you stay upstairs? Did they listen? No.
Okay.
So Andrea and 2 of the other daughters snuck down and they watched it. So Andrea writes about it in her book that she witnessed her mother speaking in tongues in a language she had never heard before, and it was not her mother's voice. She also saw her mother's chair lifting off the ground. She saw her mother get thrown across the room.
Burn the place to the ground.
Burn it all. And I'm just trying to read the rest of this because my phone doesn't want to just show me the entire thing. So then after that, Roger, the dad, banned the Warrens from the property. So in the film, everything's happy. The Warrens have saved the day, hurrah, because that's what all the films are showing them as, these amazing people. Actually, he was like, what the hell have you done to my wife? Because apparently she was in like a seizure for hours, that it took them hours to get her like recovered after this seance because of whatever they'd done during the seance. So he banished them and he was like, I never want you guys involved again. So they did not come back. They, again, still couldn't move. So this was 1973. They did not move out of that property until 1980. Things did start to kind of calm down a little bit. So it was more unpredictable. So whereas previously every day shit was kicking off, something was going on and they knew that it was going to be this or this or this. Like they knew they were going to get voices. They knew they were going to get doors slamming. They knew this was going to happen. Started to become unpredictable. So it would go quiet for really long periods, really like let their guards down, and then it would all kick off again.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so eventually it started to die down in 1977. Part of that, I think, according to experts, is because the girls had sort of started to grow up and some of them had started to leave. Maybe they'd gone to school, they weren't in the property as much, so there maybe wasn't as much energy going on in the property. Andrea described that particular time as living with the dead until we could escape. That's exactly how she described it in the book. So when they moved out in 1980, there was no like big dramatic kind of like finale to it, you know, like the spirits is doing one last hurrah and throwing things around the room. They just managed to leave, and apparently it was literally like immediate relief following that. So there's never been any medical records or police records for any injuries. So where, you know, the mother had reported that she was being cut, they'd never reported anything. Where she'd been thrown across the room, nothing had ever been reported to the police.
Been in a seizure for hours.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no police records that exist for any injuries. All of the accounts are obviously entirely the family and their testimony, and like visitors that came in, people that they know. There was never, obviously, Ed and Lorraine Warren, but depending on how you feel about Ed and Lorraine Warren, they kind of capitalised a lot on their cases, so they're going to talk about it, aren't they? They're going to big that up. There was never any, you know, the priest or the medium that were involved in the seance, I don't believe that there was any real testimony from them. It really is reliant on the kids, and the daughters admitted that there were like memory gaps where there was lots of stuff that happened that they could regale back, but maybe there's lots of periods of that time when they've got no memory of anything, or maybe their memory, they've admitted that oh, it could have happened like this, or maybe it happened like this.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it was only one of the daughters, and they've all got different stories, not necessarily different versions of the one event, but different things that happened to all of them. So not necessarily corroborating each other in that, oh yes, all 4 of us at the same time saw the little boy ghost, for example.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hard to...
I suppose this stuff, you're living there,
Yeah.
and like you say, this is your daily normal at this point.
Yeah.
You're not gonna, the dresser
No.
opened, and like I suppose
At this point,
gets
it's probably
to
happening all the time.
Yeah,
You probably
so just like
until something big happens, like one of them saying, "My mum got dragged across the room by an unseen spirit."
not
Obviously, you're going to remember that, aren't you? And then so Andrea admitted that she stands by the core events, but she said there are memory gaps. So one of the key things that happened that I forgot to sort of mention, at one point in the film, there's something called the clap clap game, which is like a really, really big bit in that film.
Yeah.
Where they're playing hide and seek. Yeah. So Gemma's like trauma. So apparently, actually, it happened differently in real life. They would do hide and seek a lot, but there was one particular time where one of the younger daughters, she went out into the barn and she found this like crate, climbed into the crate and like pulled the wooden like lid over the top and hid in there. She realised she couldn't get out, so she was screaming and like battering at it. She said it was like literally a force was like pushing on it. So she was in there for like half an hour before one of her siblings came and found her, and she said like it's fine, like it lifts straight off, and it was absolutely fine. So that's really interesting, because when I come down to some of the paranormal investigations that have happened in the property, that's kind of been emulated by like that's happened to somebody else.
Yep.
So that's kind of like the main story of the Perron family when they were living there. From 1980, when they sold the property, it was then owned by the same family until 2019. So Norma and Jerry Sutcliffe owned the property. They had no experiences. They've gone on record to say literally nothing.
No children?
No.
Just them two?
I think just them two.
Interesting.
They have never had any experiences at all. They did, however, threaten to sue the Conjuring movies, because once the film came out, they then experienced loads of trespassers.
I can imagine, yeah.
And people coming to the property
people
to try
flocking,
and see.
Yeah.
So they eventually then sold that property in 2019. They sold it to a couple of paranormal investigators, and I remember when this happened actually, and there was a lot of controversy around it being paranormal investigators that bought it. So Corey and Jennifer Heinzen purchased the property. They began offering tours. At this point, they were just doing tours of the Conjuring House. And again, I can remember this happening. I think they let like the odd person in, and like Ghost Adventures went in there and stuff like that, but they've got Ghost Adventures cash, so obviously. They did say that they experienced stuff. They said that they, in order to be respectful to the spirits that were in there, they didn't live in the entire property. They lived in like the west wing or like the east wing or something, and they didn't really experience anything until they then started opening up and started living in more rooms, and then the experiences started to heighten, and they experienced not to anywhere in the degree that the Perron family experienced, like the stuff when they first moved in, like the subtle footsteps and voices and like the milder stuff. It never escalated for them to anything like where they were being dragged across the room, for example. They then sold the property in 2022 to a property developer, a lady called Jacqueline Nunez. She bought the property for $1.5 million US. Yeah, I know. She then began operating paranormal investigations out of the property. So she was doing that for overnight sleepovers, like normal paranormal, like just hire it out, daytime tours, all of that sort of stuff. She actually had a business license revoked, and she defaulted on her mortgage in 2025. So part of the reason for that was, so I think she'd hired staff, so she turned it into a tourist attraction essentially, and she had staff that worked for her, I'm assuming tours during the day. Right. She wasn't paying them, so there was a lot of lawsuits. She got sued for not paying staff wages. She also got sued for some health and safety breaches. God knows what they were. It didn't say. And she had a DUI, which didn't help. So driving under the influence, that did not help her case with regards to the legislation. So she defaulted on the mortgage in 2025, which is when the drama starts and why it's been all over the news as of late. So obviously, because she defaulted, there's no sale, it goes to auction. So the auction was planned for the Halloween of last year. on purpose.
I was going to say,
in fitting with the spooky event. I'm guessing it was done from a marketing point of view because they want more people to talk about it, more people to bid on the property and stuff like that. So the main person who was really, really in the running to purchase this property was Jason Hawes, who was one of the lead guys from Taps, from Ghost Hunters, who I've spoken to you about before. So I quite like the Taps team, or like the original, the OG, like him and Grant, who were the first two guys that started Ghost Hunters. They were very chill, just two plumbers that started ghost hunting. Whatever. Gemma loves the fact that they were plumbers.
I just adore this. Like, what's
just two plumbers.
What is the Mario Brothers equivalent for the paranormal?
I mean, Mario Brothers do Haunted. There's like Luigi's Mansion and like there's the spooky stuff. So maybe they are just Super Mario. If they've never dressed up as the Mario Brothers, they are missing a trick. They're not brothers. But yeah, so Jason wanted to buy the property. So he said, he set up a GoFundMe. So he wanted it to get into the right hands. He wanted it in respectful, knowledgeable hands.
Okay.
I think he was worried, or supposedly this is what he's kind of, the spiel that he's given is he's worried of it becoming, because with this lady, Jacqueline, that owned it, it kind of became a bit of a farce. Like it was disrespectful. A lot of people in the paranormal world had a lot of problems with how it was ran.
Okay.
Who was allowed to go in there, this, that, and the other. Like, loads of the paranormal YouTube people have been in there, and it's become this big, like, ridiculous, like, sideshow almost. So he kind of wants to take it back into knowledgeable hands, essentially. Okay. I think part of the reason why this has happened is because the Ed and Lorraine Warren house and the museum has been bought last year.
Okay.
There was a lot of controversy around who bought that, because that was Matt Rife, the comedian. There's a lot of worry about what they're going to do and if they're going to be disrespectful to all of the property. Obviously, they've got the Annabelle doll. They own Annabelle now. They've immediately just binned off all of Ed and Lorraine's warnings about not touching things, not messing with things, and they've just binned it all off. They've ripped everything out. So it's not been the most respectful approach.
Oh my gosh.
From a paranormal investigation community point of view, people are a bit upset about that. Okay. So I think people are worried about what's going to happen to this property. So that's why people have kind of jumped on to try and support Jason on his GoFundMe.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, so his pitch focused on preserving the house's legacy for historians, for paranormal communities, and for fans of letting it become a purely commercial attraction. So that's kind of what he's put on his GoFundMe. However, on the 8th of October last year, it went into foreclosure to an unknown buyer. So it bypassed the auction. So somebody with a lot of money has come in. So obviously that's stirred up who's bought it. So the main names in the game that people were thinking about was Zach Bagans, obviously, because he already owns the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas. He's obviously probably the biggest name in the paranormal, probably has the most money. Matt Rife, if he's just bought the Warren Museum, is he buying the Conjuring House? He has done investigations there before as part of his YouTube. A guy called Elton Casti, who is also a YouTuber, but he owns like a property company within his YouTube, or like his business potentially was supposedly looking at buying this property. And he does do some paranormal stuff sometimes as well as part of that. This one's going to make you laugh. I don't know if you know about this.
Taylor Swift.
No. My Haunted Project. So
God bless them.
Yeah, so their name was thrown in. They found it hilarious, obviously.
£2 million.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Could you imagine? So somewhere on the internet, on the Reddit forums and stuff like that, somebody had raised My Haunted Project as a name.
Okay.
Danny and Harry and Dan.
I wish.
I went onto a live with them where they were talking about this, and I'm sorry guys, I'm giving away all of your secrets now, but they thought it was the funniest thing on the planet, and they were like, you guys go off and fuel the rumours.
Spread that rumour.
Yeah. You spread that rumour. Obviously that's not the case. We know now that the project has dialed down. We know now that they've got rid of a lot of their properties and they're just keeping the hotel. So we know it's not them. Unless this is the one big bamboozle. If I find out that you guys have bought the Conjuring House, I'm going to be fuming. But yeah, so there's a few names. We still don't know at the minute.
Interesting.
It's only been like 2 or 3 months, so we still don't know who's purchased that. In the midst of all of this now that this purchase has been made, suddenly there's now a few legal complaints that have been filed. So the sister of Jacqueline Nunez, the one who bought it and turned it into this big like events thing, her sister is now alleging that the original sale that Jacqueline made of the $1.5 million in 2019 was she was not mentally well enough to have known what she was taking on, or that she was not mentally in the state to be doing everything that she did. Therefore, that sale should never have been agreed to. This is because she's obviously lost all of this money because she's foreclosed. I think they're now trying to spin it, in my opinion, to try and stop the sale from happening, because the sale money is obviously going to go to whoever she's defaulted to. Yeah. So suddenly now this is, I think, stopped the sale in its tracks, because there's been a legal case that's been brought up. Okay. So I believe now that the reason that has now resulted in whoever has purchased this, that purchase being halted. So I think we're not going to find out at the minute while all of this is going on. And yeah, it's all just gone ridiculous. Locals are really angry. So the people of Rhode Island, the people of that area are really angry with the whole situation. Since it's been taken over by Jacqueline, the whole thing's obviously just exploded it, and there's tourists and there's people coming into their area that are being really disrespectful into their like local towns. Obviously people are going to Bathsheba's grave, it's a normal working graveyard. Locals are really quite upset about all of the controversy and about the paranormal side of things, and what they would prefer with the property rather than it be bought from a paranormal point of view. They want the property to be bought and preserved as a historical landmark rather than like anything to do with the paranormal. Right. So it's ruffled a lot of feathers, this property. So we're gonna have to just sit tight and see what happens with this. It's been a wild ride to see all of this going on, and to see all of the names that have been thrown in of who's buying it and what's going to happen to the property. Who knows what's going on with the ghosts in there at the minute. Maybe they're having like an absolute blast.
They're just having a rest because no one's in there.
Because no one's in there, exactly, just minding their business. So while Jacqueline had the property, and while it's been open, or even before that with the two paranormal investigators that had the property, a number of teams have been allowed to go in. So obviously Ghost Adventures did go in there. They had some stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but they had like EMF spikes, spirit box spikes, but they always do. One thing that did interest me, they did catch a black mass. And I need to go back and watch the episode, because I'm sure I'm thinking of the same episode, where you can literally see through the glass and they're all outside, everybody's outside, and you see this like mass move up to the window. I'm certain it was that episode. But they have reported seeing like black masses throughout the property. At one point, one of the crew members, I believe, had to leave because they were feeling so emotionally like charged in the property and so emotionally sensitive in the property that they had to remove themselves from the location. Other teams that have gone in, and just people that have visited when it's been opened for visitors, have had doors locking them in the basement. So the doors have been locked once they've gone into that basement area, and the basement is where the seance occurred. Right. And where obviously in the film it's a really prominent scene in the basement. So it's that things locking people into places piece again, with the daughter that experienced being locked into a box and stuff like that. They had a FLIR camera, which is a heat camera, where you can see the like hot and cold, and they would be looking at like a chair where no one had been in the room, and it looked as if there was like the heat signature of a person sitting down in chairs. Again, those cold spots in times when it shouldn't really have been, like in times of summer. Footsteps, voices, people seeing shadow figures, capturing shadow figures on video as well. So this is all in recent times. So obviously the 1970s, some of the things they were experiencing supposedly, people were still experiencing 2-3 years ago when the property was open for paranormal investigations. So it's a wild place. A lot of people think there's nothing in there. Like, lots of people have gone in there and said there's naff going on in there, but then lots of teams have gone in and said there is. From a historical point of view, obviously extremely, extremely, like, if we believe in the stone tape theory and all of that stuff, the amount of trauma that property had seen, it's like, its history is it's got more deaths in it than some properties in, Europe that are 1,000 years old, and it's 300 years old, this property. Yeah. So I'd love the opportunity to go and witness it for myself. It does look really terrifying. There's a few people that have been in there on their own and they've experienced things on their own, and you know, that can't be attributed to somebody in the next room or this, that and the other.
Okay.
It is kind of surrounded by woodland as well, so it's not that they've got any immediate neighbours. I'm sure there's plenty of things that like are unexplainable about the property, but I feel, from what I've kind of read, I feel that there are some explainable aspects to it throughout. I think the daughters and their testimony of them being children and the admittance of there being gaps in their memory and gaps in the timelines for them and stuff like that, I feel potentially does that strike out their testimony as being legitimate or being believable? I don't know. Where's your head at with this? I'm going to grab my cup of tea.
It's a difficult one. I'm just mind blown that with other houses of a similar nature, yes, the level of activity varies, but depending on who owns it, there's always a bit, you know, we get the odd bang, but for that couple to report that they have absolutely nothing
for 40 years.
For 40 years,
living
not
in
an
that
inconsequential amount of
Yeah.
time. And that must be true, because, you know, otherwise if you're getting stuff to the level that the other family had, you'd be out of there, wouldn't you? So I mean, that's really strange, whether it's I mean, I've said it before in previous episodes, that those kids, it's all about the kids.
Yeah, well, we say that, but obviously at the beginning it did kind of float around the children. It was the children that started seeing Bathsheba, if we believe that it was her. Again, a lot of paranormal people and a lot of historians don't believe that
it is.
It's for her. She didn't even live in the property.
Okay.
And although I do agree, yes, she didn't live in the property, we know for a fact that spirits aren't always contained to like one property. They can haunt a site, they can haunt multiple buildings on a site, especially if she was part of a family that owned that property for 8 generations. That whole estate is emotionally and like mentally connected to you and your family. Aren't you going to, if in death, aren't you going to expand across more than one?
Yeah.
There's plenty of cases in the past where someone's taken their life in a barn, but they haunt the actual main house because that was their home. And although Bathsheba didn't live in the house, she was living on the estate. The family, I would assume that maybe her husband was like the second son or something, so he lived in the farmhouse, the first son lived in the house, the family lived on the estate.
Yeah, and they probably gathered
I'm
in
sure
the
she
house.
went in the house before. She wouldn't
yeah.
have just never been in the house. It was part of the actual estate, and it was the Arnold estate. So I don't know whether I do understand where they're coming from in that she didn't live in the house. Why would she haunt the house? But let's just say theoretically ghosts are real.
Yeah.
Why would they just haunt on one place? I don't get it. So I'm not sure about that, but the girls were the only ones that saw her, but then it really escalated to the mother. And it really centred around the mother. Again, people's thought process around this is Bathsheba feels very territorial, that it's her estate. In her head, maybe she doesn't realise that she's dead, or that this is her home. She sees another woman in her place because she was the woman of the house. Does she hate the mother of and she felt so strongly that this thing wanted her out or wanted her dead,
or jealous of a mother that has all 5 living children?
That's a really good point. That's a very good point.
Jealousy.
Yeah. And she did have, on record, at least one daughter. One of her daughter's names was Julia. I remember that off the top of my head. I can't remember if she had another daughter or not, but she had another 3 children that passed. And at least one of them was a daughter, and obviously her son was the only one that survived past infancy. So yeah, 5 daughters to be in the house. That's a fantastic point I hadn't even considered. Thanks, Gemma. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a shame that the only time when this property really, really has been open for paranormal investigations is under the instruction of a woman who clearly probably didn't treat it as respectfully as she should. I don't feel that the property has had its opportunity for real,
thorough investigation,
respectful, logical, scientific investigation into what's happening. Because the only people that I've really seen go in are the people that are capitalising on it, the people with the massive YouTube accounts, massive TV shows. They are going to get stuff because that's, I mean, I'm not saying they're faking, but there's always going to be an element of showmanship.
If you have a
about
YouTube
those
channel to maintain and viewers to maintain,
yeah,
it's in your
even if it's something that's really happening, you're going to ham up your response
Yeah.
to it. So I would be very interested, and I'm certain that there are paranormal teams that have gone in there. Like there's a guy called Jeff Balanga, I think is how you say his name, who I quite like as an investigator, to be honest, and he used to be part of Ghost Hunters and stuff like that. I know he's investigated the property. I'd be interested to know or to see more and have more opportunity for paranormal investigation teams to go in a respectful manner, like Jay Hawes is wanting to do, supposedly. If he is
and I
true
was
in
going to
his
say,
word.
I suppose this does all lean then, which is why it's so prominent with current affairs right now, who buys it and what their intention
Exactly. And this is
with
why
it is.
so many people are talking about this and so many people are emotionally invested in this at the moment, because I think the paranormal, people get really emotionally invested in the paranormal, rightly so. All of us are searching for a reason. People, mortality is like the biggest thing for us. We're all going to die one day. We want to know what's out there. So people get very emotional about the paranormal and whether we're respecting it. These are people who are loved ones of people that have died. Every ghost is someone's loved one at some point. So when people aren't respectful with it, the paranormal community can get quite upset about
100%.
that. Sometimes too much. Sometimes I think there's far too much anger. It's quite a toxic place, but I do understand around this why there is so much concern from the locals around whether it's going to be respectful for their town, especially because New England towns are very, very, very big on their historical preservation, because they're the founding states, essentially. I'm very intrigued. This lawsuit could go on for years. I don't know. It could delay the sale for years. It could be over imminently. It could be a completely private sale and we never find out who's bought it. If it's, a YouTuber...
Imagine whoever buys it, if they never open the doors again.
And just leave it.
And they just leave.
Like Haunted of Hill House. The dad just left the property.
Yeah.
Didn't want ever anybody to go in there again.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't think they will for the amount of money. I mean, if Jacqueline bought it...
But what if the townspeople have clubbed together?
They'll have to have a lot of money.
They've bought it and then said, no,
that would be interesting, though, wouldn't
it?
Do you know what? Power to them if that is something that they ever did. Or, like, any town, if they really wanted to preserve something that was really meaningful to the town. But, I mean, I don't know how much historical relevance this property's really got that much. I think they just would prefer, if it was going to be some kind of, like, event or business, that business was historically based rather than paranormal. I'm sure what they really would like is just someone to buy it and live in it as a property again. But who's going to want to do that?
Who's going to do that?
Well, who's going to want to do that paranormally for the paranormal stuff? But who would want to do that knowing that people are going to be flocking there and they're never going to have a moment's peace and they're going to be trespassed on and have people stopping them and going, "Oh, do you own the Conjuring House?" I don't know if I'd want to put myself in like the spotlight purchasing a property to live in with no interest in the paranormal. But I'm sure people do it. People do it all the time with paranormal properties. So who knows? Stay tuned, I guess. We'll find out. I'm very excited to find out.
Yes.
I'll be really good if it's just a really boring, like...
I'm definitely going to download Rachel's book, though.
Yeah.
And read that. And
Andrea,
if I uncover anything like...
Andrea.
What did I just
You said
say?
Rachel.
Who's Rachel?
I don't know whose Rachel is. There wasn't even a Rachel involved in the story.
Wow. I'm not even a Friends fan either. That's strange.
That is strange. I don't know. Maybe Rachel's just the name that's popped into your brain.
Maybe.
It would be interesting to read.
I will read Andrea's book, and if I uncover anything of interest,
if she talks about something specifically,
if she talks about her own theories or anything, I will post it to the socials.
Yeah.
And I'll have a look. But no, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy how, I mean, from a history point of view of the history of the hauntings, not just that, but like just the history of the property in general, how old it is, how many people have died in it, the fact that 8 generations of a family owned it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know whether the guy who sold it to them, the guy who gave them the warning of I think it was something along the lines of like, whatever you do for the sake of your family, leave the lights on at night. It was, he worded it in a way that was like really like, whoa,
Bit ominous.
okay. I don't know if he was like the last person in that family line. It didn't really give me that information of who it was that owned the property before. Just, it was a man. So whether this all really kicked off with that family, because after 8 generations of the same family living in the property, since it was built basically, suddenly it's, who are you guys? I don't know whether that's relevant. Obviously this guy must have had stuff going on, because he gave them this warning, but who knows? Selfishly, I want it to be a paranormal event company or somebody that's purchased this, somebody that like the project, who are going to put cameras in there and document it and really do a thorough investigation. I would like to see that, but I do sympathise with the townspeople, I think, here, in that I feel it's maybe been disrespected as a property. It might be worth it just having a bit of a chill from being abused for a while. I wouldn't be mad if that turned out to be who's bought it. Yeah.
We will need to keep tabs. Like you say, it could be ongoing for years.
Yeah,
so
we'll find out.
And if we ever do find out.
Yeah. I'm sure it's going to change hands again in future. So we'll find out. Stay tuned. We'll post the updates. But yeah, so thoughts?
Thank you for
final
that.
Thoughts?
I love that. I think for, it's always going to be a property of interest, like you say, with just how America's history is. It's probably a unique example of because with I don't know, we almost take it for granted with like castles and like
we've got some hecking good properties,
places
here.
that like you say see a lot of death.
Yeah.
But you expect them to because of what they are, whereas this is like
it was a
small,
family home,
intimate family home. That's quite unique, and perhaps how
they moved into the property feeling this was going to be their dream home. That was their words, was this is our dream home.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. So for that to turn, I think that's what sort of piques my interest, and I just want to know why and why it seemed to start out so
calm. Why did it build over?
Because normally when we've discussed before, I mean, even with my own experience of not this house, but the house I lived in previously, the activity was worse on moving in. Yeah. And then it's almost like you get to know them, they get to know you.
Renovations, like hustle and bustle have changed, seems to kick properties off, supposedly, but they'd moved in and it was okay for like a year, and then it kicked off.
And
like
then
the
it
following
kicked
year.
off to the mother. So it's one of those bit chicken and the egg. Like, was it the property? Was it the family?
Yeah.
The kids are
Mix
telling
of
it.
both.
Kids, what do kids know of what's really going on?
Yeah.
I'm coming up with wild theories now.
But I mean, the Amityville story, that a lot of that was centered around children and stuff as well. Although the Amityville is a whole kettle of fish, and there's loads more to that. But there just seems to be there seems to be a lot to do with children in these properties, and it is interesting. You make a good point that the family that owned it for 40 years didn't have a kid that I'm aware of. I don't think they had a child. But then the paranormal investigation couple that moved in also didn't have a child in the property, but they experienced stuff, not to the degree the Perron family did. But they sort of experienced stuff as well. This family who lived there for 40 years, they just might not have been susceptible to it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Does your own unique energy? It depends whether the ghosts vibe with you or not. I wonder. I know what I'm trying to say.
I know exactly what you mean. I wonder if, because it was really important that Roger, the dad, didn't really have an awful lot. He witnessed stuff occasionally, and he obviously witnessed what happened in the seance because he banned the Warrens from. He that was solely for his
whatever
wife.
happened. Whatever actually
he was like,
happened.
Get the hell away from my wife, basically.
Yeah.
But it was really important to note that throughout all of the testimony, the dad was not really involved all that much. He had vibes, but he wasn't really involved. Is this the bloodline thing? And we've talked about this on this podcast before. Like, my whole female side of my mum's side of the family, we've all got something going on. Are we just blood-wise attuned? Were the Perron family females attuned? Was this couple that moved in after they moved out just not necessarily susceptible, or their third eye wasn't as open, or
because I know you
not
said
sensitive?
with the Enfield haunting you're not sold, but again,
it was the children,
it's
it was the
interesting,
girls,
and it was the girl children. Men are just too much of...
What have you heard? Gemma's freaking herself out.
I think it's just my dog whinging. So we'll wrap this up and I'll just check that she's okay.
Okay.
She probably just wants to go out for
and
a
on
wee.
that
note, men just, bless them, God bless men. I love men, but they're very much of this earth in the here and now.
Are,
and they're like, they walk with
the women are the more,
blinkers on all the time.
I
love that for
understand
them.
that.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be more like them.
I would love to. I would love to not be so
We are sticking our noses where they don't belong.
Yeah, I'd love to not be so in tune, not to be so empathetic, not to the point where I'm a narcissist, but not to be so empathetic, not to be so emotionally aware or spiritually aware. I would love that, because that all just causes problems.
The peace.
Yeah, I want peace. So I've sympathised with Caroline and her children and any of the women that were involved in this story, because like, honestly, being like waking up levitating and being dragged across the room,
no thank you,
locked in cupboards and stuff, no thank you. Fair play. And I'm glad for them that when they moved out, that was the end of it as well, because I can't imagine moving out and then that following you throughout the rest of your life to other properties, or mentally following you. And the family have all given statements throughout their life as they've gotten older, and they're okay. So good for them. You know, that could have been way worse than what it ended up as. Yeah. Okay.
What do you guys think? Is it the house, or just cursed women needing to move into the right house?
Yeah. Is it a case of the house itself, or a catalyst of who it is that's in the house that proves that? Or was it them? Did they bring it with them? Who knows? Please let us know your thoughts. You can find us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Hot Girl Stomps, TikTok and Facebook, HGS Paranormal Podcast. And if you've got any stories, or if you just want to chat with us and send us your thoughts via email, it is hotgirlstomps@gmail.com. And we will let you know where you can find the visual recording of this if it works out. We've only done a couple of these so far. If you like this format, if you like being able to actually like see us chat in, see our facial expressions, because in the past...
I'm so aware of this now. Like,
well, in the past, sometimes like you'll pull a face at me when we've just been recording audio. You'll pull a face, and because I'll laugh, I then have to explain. Gemma's just pulled a face, or Gemma's holding her arms in the air praising the Lord, or something like that. So if you like just being able to see the vibes as we chat to each other, let us know. Give us a thumbs up or some constructive feedback. Be nice. We'll take it on board, and we will see you on whatever the next episode's going to be, because I don't know yet. See you next time.